For the longest time, longer than I have been living at this very apartment complex, which has been, by the way, 6 years, the number one complaint you will see, including on, say, Google reviews for my very own apartment complex, has been simply never enough parking. There's always a parking issue. Last night, I found out the very hard way that complaint is, in fact, genuine. This is the complex. This is like the number one cardinal rule of content creation on the internet. You never dox yourself. I don't care at this point. Look at this shit. This is a lot, and I mean a lot of parking spaces for a complex. And technically this complex does extend down here because this is what's called the L building. And so you can technically, if you live in the complex, park down here if there's spaces open. And as you see, normally this is what it looks like during the day. And if you look over here, there's this massive, endless sea of asphalt with endless parking spaces. But you can't legally park there because it's strictly for users of TriMet. You can't. Nobody else is allowed to park there. You're only allowed to park there for up to 24 hours max before you get towed. If, again, you're using it to use TriMet, to then go to and from somewhere. Say a friend's place, I don't know, out in Troutdale or something, on the east side of the Portland area. Because this is, of course, the west side. Then you can do that. This is the parking ride for the transit center down here. But that should tell you something real quick. A, that means that last night I couldn't legally park literally anywhere. Which means I had to effectively park it illegally or abandon it. That's the only two things I could have done. And both things are going to get your car held by ransom. One of them might actually even get a criminal write-up for a parking ticket by the police. So, either way, you're fucked. I can't legally park along this side of the streets. I can't legally park anywhere in here because this is a totally different set of complexes. This is considered a private residence and drive. This is considered a private residence and complex that's totally different. And only people, of course, from those places that have the correct permitting can park there. So legally, I could only park in this slot, which I couldn't legally, and I couldn't park here legally. So I had nowhere to park because the entirety of all spaces for our complex, as many as there are, were packed. They were completely filled in. I had no choice but to legally park. So I still ended up, like, no matter what, legally I, and anyone in the same position, actually, in our complex, has to pay a $300 ticket, a ransom is what it really is, to the stupid towing company who tows the cars out of our complex. That's your only option. You have to pay $300 or whatever the fuck their towing company that they use, Tremit does, you have to pay. Because you have to park your car somewhere. And no matter what, you're going to have to pay something. You're either going to get a criminal record with a parking ticket from the police department, or you're going to get a huge ransom payment that you have to make to a tow company, and God knows wherever the fuck their tow yard is. It should not be legal for a tow company to be able to charge somebody hundreds of dollars to, quite literally, by definition, ransom pay their car back just because they didn't give anybody enough parking spaces. That is really fucked up. So that's obviously part one of it. Now, part two is the fact that I know for a fact in this complex, the majority of people who live in this complex, like myself, are poor people. By definition, we are absolutely poor. The majority of us are no higher than lower middle income, and most of us are actually below that margin. We're somewhere in the low income bracket. Some of us only have the minimal income from literally disability. So SSI, SSD, maybe cash benefits from the state and some food stamps. Maybe TAMF, who knows. That's the majority of people who live here. This down here is a fucking transit center, which should tell you the second problem with this. This should not be an issue because of living next to a fucking transit center. Do you see the problem with that? If you're poor, the last thing that you're going to do and want to do and even try to justify is buying and owning a freaking car. Because the amount you pay per month, not just to buy the car, get your permit, get your license, get your registration, renew your registration, or get a new title and a new license plate, The whole damn process, the insurance policy, and how expensive that's going to be. On top of that, you have to pay for the maintenance, any repairs you have to make. Apparently, you have to pay $300 ransom every once in a while. Maybe some sort of a parking ticket, because again, you don't have a parking space where you can legally park. You're fucked. It doesn't matter what you do, you are fucked. Like, yes, theoretically, I could have pulled over here and parked somewhere along one of these inner streets here. I could have theoretically done that. I could have technically, legally parked somewhere in here. Like, I could have parked outside of my friend's place who lives up in this area. I could have done that too, and then walked with my heavy-ass groceries all the way back down to where I live in this complex. I could have technically done that too. That would have technically been legal. Some people might frown upon it, like, who the fuck's this car? But that also brings up another issue, which is that you don't, like, how are you supposed to trust that your car is not going to get busted into? Because when you live in a high crime corridor, like we do, that's another thing. This area is a high crime corridor. It's one of the highest crime areas. So that actually has your, speaking of car payments, that has your insurance policy go way up. Because of the fact that once you're registered officially, including with insurance agencies, as a high crime area or a neighborhood, guess what happens? Your policy skyrockets. It jumps a huge premium because the fact that now there's a higher risk that you might have to take out a claim. And they don't want to do anything for you. That's how insurance works. So naturally, you're still kind of fucked. So you can park it somewhere like this, but it's kind of also out of the way, which makes it a more prime target. And there's a lot of carjackings that have been happening in the Portland area over the years. Fortunately, it's gone way back down again recently, but it's still a problem. So what the hell are you supposed to do about that? Like, yes, theoretically, you could have done that. But again, you have a transit center. You should not. If your transit system functions correctly and well and efficiently and is reliable, the last thing people in this kind of a neighborhood that are mostly poor like this are going to do is even consider buying a car and getting a car and paying for this shit that they have to pay for every fucking month for a car. It's literally an average of anywhere between probably, I'd say, $800 and $2,500 a month for a fucking car. And that's not counting the market rate rents in our complex is, I believe, $1,650 a month or something like that. It's absurd. And then you have to think about how high the tax burden is in Oregon. Well, it's the 7th highest tax burden state in the entire country out of all 50. It's freaking absurd that you have to account for all these different things. And yet we as poor people still realize that we cannot live without the car. You know, the Portland metro area, we're in a massive, sprawling, progressive, modern, transit savvy, as they like to consider themselves, Portland metropolitan area of Oregon. And yet we still rely on the car. Living right next to a fucking transit center with a state-of-the-art max light rail and multiple frequent service lines. The point is you have a lot of accessibility. And yet at the same time, it still isn't enough. In fact, if you think that it's like there's still no excuse, you got to understand how bad TriMet really is. They can, by the way, this is verbatim from TriMet. They, for at least a solid half decade now, if not a little longer, have considered themselves the leaders in transportation technology. And then they also verbatim call themselves the transit mecca of the world. I'm not kidding you. And if this is supposedly state-of-the-art, if this is supposedly so transformative and progressive, if this is supposedly the leader in transit technology, if this is supposedly the district, the agency that is a transit mecca of the world, there is no excuse for how many of us have to own a car, to the extent that literally every last single fucking parking spot in this entire complex is taken up by 11 p.m. because we own cars when we should have no business owning them, when we live next to a transit center in the transit mecca of the world. That's the second major problem this poses, and it proves. Besides also this, again, this is always this full. Maximum full fill is like usually to here. All of these spots completely filled up. And then none of these are ever filled. Even at max demand, no pun intended. That's all this park and ride fills up to. I could rant for 20 plus minutes against park and rides. It doesn't matter what kind of a parking right it is. They are non-justifiable. This is why. Most parking rates, no matter where you are in the world, are fucking empty. It's the stupidest thing. And they're also, again, very gate-kept. They're very restrictive. Because you can only do it if you are a transit user. AKA, if you're literally, at the moment you're parking your car there, intending and are, in fact, using the transit. This shouldn't be a fucking problem. We live in a transit corridor. Okay? We live in one of the supposedly best, most innovative, and modernized metropolitan areas in the country, with apparently arguably the best transit in the entire country, supposedly, and yet it means nothing. An example, it takes me, before I had my car, it took me an average of 2.5 hours to go from this stupid transit center down here to Merlo Station, catch a 62, to go down Murray Boulevard, to go up Shoals Ferry, to go to my stupid doctor's office literally right here. You notice how fucking close that is and also how straight of a shot that is? Look at this. It's literally from here, from here, up to here. And then here, straight shot to here. From here. That's it. 2.5 hours on average. That's how long it takes me to get there. It's a major fucking problem. This should never be a problem. It should never be a thing that this somehow is this bad of an issue to where you have to talk about that. Especially considering parking reforms are a beautiful thing. Like, to get rid of parking minimums is a huge deal. It's great to see that done. Because parking lots, I mean, as you can fucking tell, this is almost the size of the entire fucking apartment complex I live in, for Christ's sake. Every building is 3 stories. This is almost the exact same size as this. And in fact, TriMet actually owns this piece right here too. So they own this whole fucking tract of land, not counting the transit center piece as well. That's all the parking lot land that they own. This is what they fucking own. It's literally the exact same size together. Like, you could literally put this, shape it, and then put it like this, and it would literally be perfectly matched over our entire apartment complex for fucking parking lots that are empty. It makes sense. So yeah, my car is being held for $300 now, ransom, by the stupid towing company because of a reserved space. Ultimately, here's the bottom line. It should be highly illegal, A, for a towing company to be able to charge you $300, literal, by definition, ransom, to get your car back. It should be totally illegal. Specifically in these kind of circumstances, where the complex failed to have enough parking for its residents. That should be illegal. I'm not saying they shouldn't be able to charge. It's a business, as much as it sucks to say. So yes, they should be able to make some sort of a money off of it, obviously, or else they wouldn't do it at all. So max 100, but even 100's robbery. It should be probably no more than 50. It should be capped like $50 each time they have to tow your car from a reserved space. It should be legally capped at 50. The tow company responsible for ransoming your car back to you, because they towed it, should be legally required by law, and I think this should be federally, both of these, to call the person that they've towed and let them know, hey, we towed your car. Here's what you have to pay to get it back. Here's our tow yard. Come and get it when you can. That's what they should do. They should be legally required to do that, to advise and inform people, hey, we towed your car. We have your car. You want to get it, pay the ransom, and you can come pick it up yourself from our tow yard. Here's where it is. That should be legally required. So as you can see, they're obviously contracted by the apartment complex. This is obviously the administrative building. So in theory, they should automatically know via the registration in the little window sticker which resident it is that car belongs to, so they can get that information, at least that the resident's location. And hell, maybe put a fucking note on the door. Stick it on the door or something, you know? There's no reason not to do that. Or leave it with the office at the very least. And then the office maybe can call you, or they can go stick it on your door. this is not just a zoning problem and a parking problem slash reform issue, it's a transit issue. Because this should not be something that can coexist. This should never be remotely close to an issue that arises at any point ever, no matter what. It's inexcusable that this is here and yet this is a problem. Because it proves that this doesn't function almost at all. And certainly not in a genuinely useful, helpful way. Which is what a public service like transit is supposed to fucking do. It shows they don't care about their riders, they don't care about their employees, and they don't care about how good or bad the transit system is. But they'll still keep patting themselves on the back on a world stage and say, we're the transit mecca of the world, and we're innovators, and we're the leaders in transit technology, and look at us, look at us, look at us. Copy us. While they go and become a fucking property development firm. Like, oh, weird how that parallels, isn't it? Jehovah's Witnesses. That's what they are. They're a real estate development firm now. That's what they are. That's literally TriMet. It's a fucking parallel I made in my last JW video that I just cut out. Because it seems a little weird and off-putting, I think, to most people would. Because, like, how the heck does that make any sense? But it literally, that's the correlation. It's stupid. It seems like it's a theme now for any corrupt organizations that they become, they have became, like it's the meta, they have to become a property development firm. In fact, arguably, until they fix this problem, what they really need to do, in my opinion, is they need to be forced, again, by law, to reserve half of these spots, since it's always empty anyway. This half of the lot should be reserved for residents of this complex as overflow parking. So in other words, they can't park here just by choice. They have to do it if it's overflow. In other words, oh, is there no space anywhere near my building? Is there no spaces at all? Okay, I'll park here instead. Overflow parking. It should be reserved for that. Or hell, if you really want to be weird about it, they could reserve it to this square or this square. But at least reserve it strictly for overflow parking, because this should be illegal. Because there's just too much, and it's obviously it's partially TriMet's fucking problem, because we shouldn't have to rely on cars because of how shit their system is. This literally proves how bad TriMet is at doing transit. It literally fucking proves it. It goes back to what I've mentioned before. Quite literally, there is a lot of different employers in the Portland Metro who, when they hear that you rely on TriMet, they will automatically tell you, we can't hire you. Because every single time we've hired somebody, even when they've lived like straight down the road 4 miles, but they rely on TriMet, they get here either way too early or really late, and we can't have that. So unfortunately, we had to fire them, and it keeps happening. So we've made it a rule. You have to drive because it's that unreliable. It's a substantial amount of business owners and franchise owners that understand this because they've dealt with it and experienced it. And of course, a lot of people who need jobs. And they're like, we have to have a car, but we can't afford it because we don't have a job. But we have to have it because we can't get a job in order to afford the car because TriMet is a fucking piece of shit. It's fucking amazing. It's the story of the fucking United States in a nutshell when it comes down to transit, getting around, getting a job, traffic planning, city planning, you fucking name it, zoning. It's the story of this fucking country, and it's fucking terrible, and it should not be a thing. And there's a lot of stuff about this that should be very illegal, but of course, it never will be. In fact, that's probably why it's going to permanently remain legal, because government loves this kind of shit. I digress.